Screening as part of this year's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is a film called Come Back, Mr. Bule, and it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of that film, Jamie Wilson. Jamie, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Good to talk to you, and this is such an intriguing film about Westerners coming back to Bali. What was the inspiration behind making this film?
Well, it's a long story. I'd been to Bali many, many times in the early 2000s, and you know, Bali's kind of had this reputation, I think, and still does in some respects. Um, and so I went over there to kind of see it for myself, and I ended up going there many, many times for a holiday, and then things started to happen over there, as we all know. We had, things like the Bali bombings and the Bali Nine, and that kind of created um, a lot of negative publicity especially in Australia, and put people off going over there, including myself. So I went back a few years after all of that, of course, and discovered that nothing had really changed. That it was not what it wasn't. What the place wasn't what the media was kind of telling you it was. What it had become. This kind of dangerous, country, island, where you could get, set up, with drugs or, blown up by terrorists or, you know, food poisoning. It was just the list was ridiculously long of things that could happen to you when in fact nothing really happens to you over there. It's not that kind of place at all.
Right. So then tell me about making the film and shooting the various bits, because I've already spoken to Zev Howley, who is in the film. Tell me about your process.
Mm. Well, I wrote down. I went back for a holiday, and I came back, and then I thought about it. I thought, okay, I think there's something in this. Here I am so many years after all this stuff had happened, and I've gone back there and I've come back to Australia, and there's still this negative publicity going on. So I kind of thought, all right, how can I kind of create a story here about that? So I, kind of wrote down some ideas, but I didn't write an official script because I didn't really know who I was going to interview, and I didn't know what would happen when we were over there. So I kind of knew from the get go that it was going to be a run and gun style film, that we were going to have to be fairly flexible with it and see what happens. And basically we went over there with all our gear and a bunch of release forms, and took a bit of a leap in faith that we were going to get through it. The interesting thing was that just before we actually went over there was all these warnings about journalists going over there and you know covering stories about all the stuff that's going on over there without having any visas. And we weren't journos, but we were kind of told through the consulate that we should have these journalist visas. And so I kind of madly tried to apply for them, and then nothing happened. And then we just thought, no, we're just going to have to jump on the plane and go over there. So it was kind of a whirlwind of a situation, but off we went, and then we started shooting the film as soon as we landed, virtually.
Yeah, and you've spoken to quite a number of people, as and Zev as well, and so on. Was it easy talking to them? Did they want to talk to camera about what was happening now in Bali and encouraging people to come back?
Most did, actually. We didn't really come up against we didn't have any kind of issues in that department. Obviously, you kind of got to make a bit of a judgment call on people that you're going to approach. There certainly were some people I wouldn't have approached. They probably wouldn't have much to say, some of those people, obviously, but um, most of the people we approached were quite happy to talk about it. And I picked my mark. I obviously picked a few Aussies, being an Aussie myself. And that was kind of my target audience anyway. As you know, many Australians go to Bali, so that was kind of part of it. And some of the locals, obviously, some of the Indonesians to kind of get their perspective on things. So it was interesting how it played out. It wrote the story wrote itself as we were filming, and we were kind of lucky to have that happen because I wasn't too sure how that was going to work. And then Zev ended up being part of that story. More than likely you've seen the film.
Yes.
So Zev ended up kind of being one of these people that's like, Bali. I'm not sure, and he really was unsure. I mean, he nearly was going to bow out of coming over there and shooting the film with me.
Ah, how interesting. You shot the film at a number of really interesting locations. Were there any issues in shooting at various places?
Not really, no. And the thing was, we were kind of paranoid about that because we were told that the police will pull you up and officials will pull you up if you got a camera and you got your visas. And of course, none of that happened. Obviously, we just laid low, and there was only two of us, and we didn't have a lot of. I mean, we had a lot of gear, but we didn't have, like massive. Like we didn't have a massive camera or anything like that. It was kind of all fairly discreet, and we kept low key with it, so that wasn't really an issue. And like most of the locations we shot at, people were fine. It was just, kind of what time of day you were there. And if there are a lot of people there, well, then maybe you wait a little while. So, I think in that respect, everyone, involved was quite, open to the whole thing.
Okay, that's very good. So it's now turned into this 45-minute documentary. You also use music and so on. So putting that all together must have been perhaps a bit of a challenge.
Look, I mean, this film's a retrospective, so I think it's kind of quite interesting all these years later that it's kind of still in the festival circuit to a point. Um, and it was actually a longer film. It was actually about, I think, around 70 minutes, and I then decided to pull it back and recut it. And then we managed to upscale it more recently, which was fantastic, and do a bit of work on the sound. But yeah, it was kind of fairly. I mean, it kind of just kind of happened that way, and then um, I went back and shot more stuff as well. So I did an initial trip with Zev, and then I kind of realised that I needed a little bit more in there. So I went back, I think, another two times, and I took the camera over with me and shot some extra stuff and kind of added that to the mix as well. But yeah, I didn't purely go over there just for that. I went there for a holiday as well. So I kind of had the best of both worlds in that respect. Um, yeah, so it's kind of interesting that you're looking back at that film now. Yeah,
Mm.
I haven't been back to Bali now. Geez, how long? It's been probably 7 years since I've been. I've been going back to. I've been going to Thailand more than anything, but I haven't been back there, and I know it's changed. It's not. I don't believe it's kind of massively changed, but it's probably like it's quite developed these days, especially in those touristy areas where we film.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of development going on over there and stuff like that. So you know, yeah, I mean, Bali's, it's a big honeypot for most of Indonesia. I think at one stage tourism was like 80% of their economy.
Right. Yeah. So what made you decide to title the film Come Back, Mr. Bule?
Okay, it's actually pronounced Bule, and Bule
Bule.
in Indonesian means white. Yeah, so that was some people have picked that up, and some people haven't. But yeah, so it's kind of self-referential in many respects. And I've been over there a few times, and I got to know some Indonesians as well. I also shot and directed a music clip over there, which part of that features in the documentary. So that was a nice little connection, and that gave me a bit of an inroad into kind of, seeing Bali in a slightly different light as well. It's quite different when you holiday somewhere and then you get to know locals and they show you the real side of somewhere, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does. So you've mentioned this a few times, but the editing process, getting the final cut right after you said you shot extra sequences and so on, that must have been a challenge.
Was laborious. It was very long-winded because again, it was not created from a script. It was like I kind of had to, in my brain, I had to kind of pace it, interview, visual, cut away, back to interview again, and just kind of trying to create a rhythm as we went along, or as I went along with the editing. So it was kind of trial and error, but I edit most of my own films. So um, yeah, I think I've kind of gotten to a bit of a rhythm and I've got a knack for finding it. I made another documentary many years ago called Burger Men, which was about Danny's Hamburgers in St George's Road in Fitzroy. And that's just recently been picked up for collection by the National Film and Sound Archive,
Ah,
which is fantastic. And so I wasn't expecting that to happen. And that was made in a very similar way. I shot that over about 2 or 3 years. And then I spent about another 2 years editing it, which is kind of what happened with Bule. So, and both these docos at one stage were going to be financed. So, they weren't at the end of the day. So I went down the path that I went down, and it took me a lot longer to complete those films. And would I probably make any more documentaries on the run like that? I'm not too sure because it's very kind of time consuming.
yes. Okay, no, I understand. So, you've mentioned that the film has screened elsewhere before it screens at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July. Tell me about reactions you've received to the film.
I think people have found that, uh, most people saw the original cut of the film, which I think screened at Muff from memory, and it picked up
Ah,
Best Documentary back then. Oh, geez, I'm going back 2011 or 12, maybe.
uh-huh.
But I mean, the people enjoyed it. It was kind of a bit of an overview of what goes on, and I purposely chose to kind of film around those touristy areas because that's what I'd experienced. So that's what was in my head. And then I kind of opened it up with, when we went to Ubud and a couple of other areas and spoke to different people, why they were there, what their experience was. But I really kind of wanted to show, what kind of happens in that main kind of hub in Bali, which is probably where a lot of young people still go to, I would say. So yeah, but the reactions been quite good. Some people have never been there who have seen it. Have kind of said, "Oh, it makes me want to go there," and it's like, well, in my books, that's a mission accomplished. And I think it also has opened people's eyes up to, hey, it's a safe place to go to.
Right. Ah, how interesting to hear that. Has it been screened in Indonesia?
No, no, and there were a couple of scenarios with that. At one stage, when I was going back over there for a holiday, we were going to screen it somewhere locally, but kind of one thing led to another, and it didn't happen. And there are a few film festivals over in Indonesia, so I probably because there's a bit of a resurgence with it, I'll probably look at taking it, to some festivals over there and kind of see if they're interested.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. And I noticed you also did another film called Coming Home.
Ah, yes, yes. I've actually just we completed that the beginning of this year, and yes, that's been put out to a few festivals. I think it's the subject matter is about the Melbourne lockdown. So
Yeah.
I think yeah, it's a bit it's a bit raw for Melbourne, but it's certainly been in just recently kind of submitted elsewhere around Australia and to some festivals overseas. So fingers crossed that we get some traction with that because it's a good film. We got some great reviews overseas with it, but yeah, I think for Melbourne it's just a little bit too bit too close to the bone, and I think that's really unfortunate. That's
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed with that, but that's just the way it works with some films that you make.
Yes, yes, no, I understand. It's a pretty good sort of horror. Well, horror is not quite the right word, but a good drama and a family in lockdown. Yeah, so interesting.
It is, and I mean, it plays out the way it does, and I sat on that idea for a couple of years when the lockdown started, and then it kind of grew and grew and grew in my mind, and I just knew when I was making it. It was quite a difficult film to make in some respects. I couldn't cast it. I couldn't find an actress to play that main role, and obviously Lara Dean um, was willing to do it, and she did a good job of it, and the little girl as well, of course.
Mm.
So it wasn't easy to cast at all, considering the mood of it.
Mm.
But the irony was that when we shot that film over about 5 or 6 days, we actually were laughing all the way through it. So, we it kind of for the tone of that, for that kind of film, yeah, that we enjoyed ourselves, and that was kind of good because I did think at the beginning, it's going to be one of these shoots where everyone's going to be because of the tone of it, but
Yeah,
we ended up having a lot of fun making it. So I'm very happy with that film. It's just I think it's just going to take a little bit of time before it can kind of get a bit of traction with it.
sure.
It's such making films is such a it's really labor intensive. I don't think people really understand a short film or feature. It's a lot of work.
Yes. No, I absolutely understand. And I just wanted to ask you, are you making another film at the moment?
I've just finished shooting a film on 16 mil, so that's been something that's been on my mind for some time, and we just actually shot it last week. We've got to go back and do another couple of pickups, but yeah, and that's kind of a bit lighter than coming home, but yeah, involves crime. And I've potentially got something happening with a feature next year, but it's all going to depend on whether the finance goes through.
Uh,
Been down this path a few times now, so we'll wait and see what happens. And that would be quite a jump from the other, the kind of films I normally make, which are usually kind of a little kind of on the dark side. But we'll see what happens. I've got another documentary in the wings as well, so we'll see what happens with that.
okay. And I just wanted to ask you, are there any particular films or filmmakers that maybe inspire you?
There's many people like Jacques Tati, um, Brian De Palma. Oh, geez, so many. Steven Spielberg. I mean, kind of the mainstream directors do, but or yeah, it's changed so much too these days.
Mm.
I don't. I tend to watch a lot of more close. I watch a lot of old black and white films, believe it or not, like James Cagney, Groucho Marx, and all sorts of stuff. Um, and Joan Crawford. I like Alfred Hitchcock films, of course. Um, yeah, gee, off the top of my head, there's so many.
Yeah.
After this interview, I'll be thinking, Jesus, I just said this and should have said that. But there's so many, and I kind of comedy and drama for me. They go together. I kind of make them go together.
Yep.
I don't, I don't. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a filmmaker that just makes one kind of film only. I kind of jump around. I think making documentaries is kind of factual technically, and then narrative is an escapism. So I find that I go between those two. I'll have enough of the fantasy, and then I'll want to go back to factual. That's kind of the way I work. Depends what's in my head at the time.
Sure. No, I understand. Fair enough. Well, look, congratulations on Comeback Mr. Bule, which is going to be screening at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival very soon. And we've been speaking to the director of the film, Jamie Wilson. Jamie, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Pleasure. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye bye.